Hello, everyone. My name is Emma Rimeike, and I'm co-founder of Quantum Cybersecurity Skills. We're very passionate about risk optimization and security efficiency. And thank you so much, everyone, for your great support and interest in us recording Series 2. My guest today is Kandice Callender, and maybe Kandice, you can introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Kandice Callender, and I'm a business continuity manager currently in the healthcare services. Been doing this for now almost 8 years, so rolling into 10 years soon. Have a vast industry experience, worked across the board on a lot of different industries and doing business continuity and learning a lot of information with this sector. So really excited to be here.
Fantastic, thank you. So, as Candice suggested, I even forgot to mention what is the theme of today's video recording. So, as Candice said, we're going to talk about effective business continuity, how the focus has shifted in the past to 5 years, what makes, what is the key for success when rolling out effective business continuity plans, how the interdepartmental communications
Mm.
work to ensure the project efficiency. So yeah, let's start, Candice. Where do you want to start?
Oh, happy to start from anywhere really. We could just dive right in. It's not a problem for me.
Good.
Um, yeah.
So good. Tell me, please, what do you see in the, what is the major shift in the past
Mm.
3 years, from the focus point of view? Have you noticed anything?
Yeah, for business continuity, it shift from just being all about the business to now being about how does it affect our back end, which is disaster recovery, and then also end users, which is now operational resilience. Um, it gets a bit wordy, I would say, but I'm seeing this seamlessness now because now
Fantastic.
we're able to look from, okay, from the moment we have our applications, our systems, then we're looking at our business, our departments, and now we're looking at, well, how does it affect our end users, whoever your customers are. We always used to look at the supply chain, but now that we're focusing on making sure that our customers are always easy to still access our services, whatever it may be in whatever sector, they still are included and they're acknowledged. It used to be more focused on, well, the business needs to get up, the business needs to be the focus, because without the business, obviously, then you don't have your customers. But we need the customers in order for the business to run.
Of
And that's
course.
why we used to have where within a year, some or within 3 years, a new business, if they end up with an incident, they don't recover because we're not thinking about our customers. How do we keep our customers engaged while we're recovering our business from an incident? You know?
Very interesting point.
Mm.
Great tip. So, who needs to be at the table, brainstorming table, for this to be a great success? What is your practice?
Um, I say all the major departments. So you're looking at when you're thinking about business continuity and that engagement, that's where you need that buy-in. So of course you need the CEO to be up there. You need the head of department. So you're looking at legal, comms, marketing, of course IT, HR, and all of your critical departments. Now that doesn't mean that departments aren't critical, but we're saying those that in the first 24 hours or even 4 hours, you need those businesses or those departments to be up and running in order to still function. They're critical. They need a seat at the table. We need to have that discussion. And the key part will always be IT. Most of the things that happens these days are IT, but we also need to be aware that now we're seeing a lot more natural disasters. So we're seeing a lot more flooding, extreme
Yeah.
temperature. We have to now be aware that although we used to have adverse weather and we focus more on technology, we need to go back to that as well because technology isn't always built to deal with those adverse weather. So it's
And it could
really,
be affected, right? If
yeah,
Yeah.
If you have heavy snow, like they had the incident in Texas earlier on this year where they had like ice rain, it froze the whole ground. When the water melted, it destroyed lines, so you didn't have people who had any internet, any water, any electricity at all. And it's the combination now of incidents. It's not just one incident. It's one incident, but it is like a domino effect to everything else that gets affected.
True,
So,
true. So, I mean, I'm curious about obviously from your perspective in terms of business continuity. You are aiming to keep the downtime as short as possible, ideally avoid it, right? Um, so how do you, again, with whom do you collaborate? Is it security services department or outsourced MSSP, to help ensure we are back to normal business as soon as possible? How do you achieve this?
um, I think the ideal we had before for business continuity was very much quickly get back up and recovered. And now I'm very much, you could take the pandemic, for example. You kind of need to learn to work at a minimum level. So now we need to learn to maintain that, because in that minimum level are key skills or key areas, whether it be security, IT, you're looking at anything to do with information, because if you look at ransomware as well, you need to be able to work in that minimum level for sometimes a longer period than you need to or you want to. And that to me is very important, is understanding with the business. You may have to work in that space a little bit longer than you actually determined, and let's see how far we can go from there. Security is very important, especially information security, because you're thinking, if there was a ransomware attack, well, how are we protecting that information? What regulations and checks and balances are we doing to make sure that we can have a secure area, or we have secure technology? And if that fails, what do we do next?
Yeah,
So it's always challenging yourself to think outside the box.
challenging status quo, as they say.
Yeah.
um, so this is like ringing a little bell in my head. So
Mm,
literally, you cannot afford to have any blind spots. Everything has to be like tested, right?
yeah.
Because when disaster strikes, you
Mm,
cannot test will your processes work.
mm,
Have you thought of this? Of course you. And it leads to another question, talking about risk tolerance,
mm.
how this has changed. Do you observe any trends? Are the businesses less tolerant or more tolerant, or it depends on the industry or each business, you know, culture and so on? So, yeah, so maybe first question would be about testing, assessing the processes, efficiency, and the second is about risk tolerance.
So testing, yeah. I'm happy with the testing to be annually, but because you have to understand, even in technology security, with all the technology we have, they test it so often anyway. So a major test every year makes more sense. You give people enough time to do whatever upgrades they have to do whatever patchwork they have to do. Also for the business side, you're thinking of the departments, the people who use the systems, get familiar with it, get used to the changes. So that when you do test them, it's not in the back of their mind because it's not fresh. So now
Yeah,
you're saying, well, let's see how well did you retain that knowledge. Let's see how well did you actually pay attention to the information that was given to you, or the new development of these technologies. Um, and I think we tend to, now they're trying to over test, because they're trying to test so often that is like, that's fine. That means when you're testing a scenario all the time, the same scenario, that scenario may never come up, or it may come up attached to something else that you haven't even tested.
mm,
So instead of over testing an area, change it up, get people more involved, try to choose their deputies instead of the actual people who are going to do it, and then choose their deputies, because you never know. You need different levels of people to actually know what
sure.
they're doing. And I do feel that sometimes, like I said, the over testing is a bit much. And I do think companies need to start thinking about live testing. They take a long time to get there. They rather do tabletop, they rather do scenario based. But when you do a live test, even if you block out 4 hours where you don't have that much activity, but it's a live test nonetheless, especially for IT, and to see how quick they really can bring that up, then you're able to go, oh, okay, these are our gaps now that we have. This is the risk. This is what we're able to actually say, you know what, we could tolerate this risk just a little bit longer, or maybe we need to shorten that time, that recovery time for that particular application or system,
Mm,
whatever it may be. So then you get to learn your system a little bit more. And being part of a live test is so much more intense, but it creates this idea of, oh, now we understand. Okay, this is how often you guys actually need this, more so than we expected. So again, it identifies the gaps within which you can then find mitigating strategies, or you may find we have no strategy for this. So we need to make sure this is the most critical thing to come back up as quickly as possible, even if it means to the detriment of something else, because now you're
mm,
thinking, well, without this, we can't do the other things, or we need the other things quicker in order to get that particular critical
yes.
application or system. The risk tolerance, I kind of feel like a lot of companies now are a little bit more open to accepting more risk, because they're realizing you can't not accept certain amount of risk, and certain risks unfortunately may end up being a lot bigger or a lot longer before you can recover it. You have
Mm,
to have low, medium, high, extremely severe, but you have to be able to be flexible. So I think the flexibility on your risk tolerance is so important, because where you might think, nope, we need to get back within an hour, and in reality, that's not possible in an actual incident. When you test things, yeah, it may work smoothly, but in an actual live incident, you don't know. There's so many mitigating circumstances that could play a role in you not being able to recover whatever it may be. So I think they have to have that flexibility, and they have to have that engagement with communications to say, well, this is the message we're going to put out, because this risk is going to take a lot longer.
mm.
We're not able to recover in the quickness that we expect. So let's put this out. Let's make sure that communication to their customers, to their employees, to anybody recovering, that hey, we're here with you, we're here supporting you, we're okay to take a little bit of a harsher risk. Um, but companies may not, because most of the time their risk is financial.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And
So
talking about that, I'm a big fan of reading various research reports. Literally,
mm,
this is what I do almost every night. I hope it doesn't say much about my life.
no, it's fine.
um, yeah, so yesterday I was reading about DDoS attack Kaspersky Labs, by Kaspersky Labs, and the research found that was from 2020, quarter four, not two.
Mm,
So literally about 75% of DDoS attacks are less than 1 hour long.
mm,
Um, but there is like a new trend that they're affecting, the attacks, DDoS attacks are more on providers now. So the
mm,
damage is felt across multiple businesses and so on. I also was reading recently about ransomware, what
mm,
is the average ransomware downtime? And they said the report suggested it was about 6 days, the average one. So
mm,
then I took Gartner's, IDC, a few other numbers based on business size or industry, because
mm,
Gartner suggests it's about $360,000 up to shooting up to $500,000 per hour. So if you multiply this by six, which is average ransomware
mm,
downtime, as research suggests, you come up to some pretty impressive numbers, and this is
Mm,
just, downtime cost, not to include decisions, is someone going to pay ransom or not?
mm,
The trend is evolving not to pay for
mhm,
the ransom, not to be encouraged. But there are different tactics like triple ransom and so on, triple
mm,
extraction and so on. So the question I'm leading to is how crucial it is for the business to communicate and know their downtime cost as a business as a whole, as a global organization. Is it like you knock on the CFO's doors
mm.
and say, give me this number, or you need to work with the different departments to get this, or you just take average gardeners, or different organizations research based numbers? So how does it work in practical business, because
Yeah.
this is big thing. I mean,
Mhm.
it sounds easy, right? But many business struggle with
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. No, that's true. I don't think it's just the CFO. It's like a combination, a
Mm,
collaboration between um, departments, because obviously finance will play a part, but then they have to think, what if you get ransomware when it's coming down to payroll time, where
mm,
everyone needs to get paid, your critical time, and sometimes that's maybe 2 weeks before payday, where they're sorting out all of those financial figures,
yeah,
um, where you're now thinking, oh wow, that financial tolerance there for that ransomware attack, let's say you're down for 6 days, it's a lot more detrimental than if it was in the middle of the month where they hardly had as much financial figures that they're dealing with. You could also take where they're in the middle of a project, and it's whether it's a project, it's a big overhaul for the company. Let's say they're bringing in new technology, and in the midst of that, you have a ransomware attack. How do you then protect um, your business, and how do you quantify that financial figure?
exactly.
So it's quite a I like to say it's quite a intricate and very multi-layered type of approach, especially when it comes to finance. And it really does depend on how much do you value that time. And then you have to look at it from end to end, month to month, because where one department it might be fine. So that time might be a quiet period for them. So
Mm,
if it was a ransomware attack, that's okay. But another department, that's a critical time. You then have to think, well, what do? You have companies who are tendering for work. What do you do when you're in the midst of your tender application or your presentation and there you go, ransomware attack? How important then and how much financial burden do you then take for those things? I think it's such a complicated decision to put a number on those times that it's probably constantly in a cycle going around and around. Numbers are changing. You can never set a certain amount. I mean, I would say I understand the strategies where they want to pay, they don't want to pay, how they deal with the ransomware, but I think the numbers will constantly change for that CFO to finally quantify to say, okay, well, if it's during this period, then we could take a hit for this. Or if it's during that period, then we might have to reconsider. I think it's a constantly moving scale
yeah.
of where do we look at how much financial loss do we take for this. Um, so yeah, that's my main thing. I would say it's constantly moving. There's no fixed or definite answer for
Mm,
how do you quantify it, because it could
mm.
happen as and when, we just have to be ready to have those figures and be ready to say, well, this is what we're thinking roughly we could afford to lose, or roughly what we could afford to negotiate with.
Okay. Candice, I mean, the time is flying. I'm really enjoying the conversation. Maybe,
Mhm.
you know, for us to summarize. So
Yeah.
please give like 3 bullet points. If you could, so for the business continuity success, what would be, top things, top areas to look at, or top skills, or to ensure the success? So
Mhm. Um, Okay, so top three things for me, especially if you're a business continuity um, manager or analyst or advisor, whatever it may be, the three things that you have to be able to do is that communication. The communication on different levels of you're talking to the CEO, you're talking to executives, but you also need to talk to staff, you also need to train staff, and you also need to be able to not make business continuity seem so boring. We have a lot of terminology, we have a lot of, you know, um, things and quirky things that we say, but not everyone's going to understand it. So it's making it relatable. So communication is so key, because communication then leads to engagement. Being able to engage and negotiate and allow people to kind of understand what we're doing, how we're doing it, and where we see their parts and their roles to play is so key
Yes.
in that sense. And also not being scared to lead, because there are times where in an incident, we're going to have to step up and say, hey, you have a plan. Let's invoke our plan. And this isn't going according to plan, but let's try this. Because what we
Mm,
get is you get people still in those moments where they panic, or they want to just fight, or they just want to go headstrong into something, or they just want to run away, whichever the reaction, your natural reaction is. As
mm,
a BC professional, you need to be able to stand firm and actually calmly address the situation and lead it. It's it's difficult because you think, oh, I have to lead my CEO. Yes, you do. In that moment, he's not your CEO. He's the person you need to lead to help his company get back up on track. So you need to keep plowing through. Um, I would say for businesses, three things for them would be, again, the encouragement for engagement. Like, you have to understand, we plan for things that are the worst, that may never happen, but then they may, you
yeah.
know. For years I've heard people talk about the pandemic, and then you're like, oh, it actually occurred. And then for years I heard ransomware, something, you have hackers and everything, and now it's happening. So it's very much we want them to engage with us, which then leads me to the second point. We want them to be patient with us, you know and we also want them to make sure that we do have a seat on the table, because when you come to technology, when you come to the new projects you're coming on board, you also have to think, how does this affect the business, and then how does this affect the business if something was to occur in the midst
Yeah.
of a project. You could end up having an incident because of that project. Do you have any backup plans to go, oh crap, how do we deal with this?
Mhm.
So it's a multitude of things, but the collaboration we need so much from our businesses. That patience to understand, hey, we're here, we're ready to learn, and we're also ready to have that seat on that table to say, okay, yes, this works with our plans, this works with our strategies. Oh, this actually makes our strategies easier. We can now help you implement that project and say, hey, you could actually use these programs and these communication tools, and let's engage everyone from top down to bottom, like every sector. you
Yeah.
know a BC professional is here to help, but we also have other skills in different things. So
Fantastic. Well, it was my absolute pleasure, Candice, to have you. And I think we had very, very interesting and insightful recording here.
yeah,
People and the organizations will benefit from this. So appreciate being guest on SOC Superposition.
yeah.
And thank you so much.
All right, thank you.